Hello, this is Catherine from Accelerated Reader, reading books for you. Today, I will be reading Chapter 8, Healing, from Tested Love by Liv Donata. Before I begin reading, I would like to give a big thanks to the author for sending me this book to read on my channel. In the description below, I've included links for me to find and purchase this book. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Healing. Sadie woke up in a cold sweat from yet another nightmare. She had been having them since the trial started, but she thought they had stopped when she moved in with Robert. It turned out she was wrong. Maybe she was getting too comfortable with him. Maybe she was actually homesick. To Sadie, it was harder that she left her hometown with unresolved feelings. It didn't matter to her that half the community thought she was a murderer, or even that some wanted her dead. The worst part of this for Sadie was seeing the pain in the Posens' eyes. They weren't a family to show their feelings or to feel. And regardless of Sadie and Clark's true relationship, they were almost family. Now, the only family Sadie had was Robert. Her own family had yet to reach out in congratulations or to check in on her new life. She wondered if they even cared to know that she had found true love in the arms of another, or if it was all about mixing money to them. Maybe they don't even know where I am or what's happened to me, she thought. Something made her want to go back there, to her hometown, just for a visit. She didn't feel she could fully settle and leave the past behind without resolving it. She thought about bringing it up to Robert. She knew he would quickly make plans for her, but she didn't want to make him feel like he wasn't enough. On the other hand, he must also have a past left semi-unresolved. She wondered how he was ripped away from his loved ones. His wife had committed suicide. Surely she had left behind open wounds. Maybe if Sadie could introduce her idea slowly, and they could make a trip of it to their hometown's foreclosure, that would be enough. Despite the nightmares, last night had been magical. Sadie and Robert were closer than ever before, and Sadie found herself settling into her role in the house perfectly. This morning, she would help the maids prepare the couple's breakfast as Robert got dressed for work. Then, Sadie and Robert would quickly eat before Robert went off for the afternoon. Robert kissed Sadie goodbye as he walked out the door. While Robert was away, Sadie spent most of her time in the library researching or writing poetry. Their meeting with the governor was coming up in the next week, so Sadie felt it was best to prepare by finding any extra breadcrumbs that had been left unfollowed. Through her research, the only things she could find were some small claims on underground forums. It seemed like there were only mumblings of conspiracy theories and nothing more substantial. They only had their proof to stand on. Hours had passed since breakfast, and Sadie was starting to fade, so she headed to the kitchen for a cup of tea and a snack. She sat at the dining room table with her lemon tea and a cup of fruit when there was a knock at the door. She wasn't expecting anybody. She stood up from the table and made her way through the house and to the front door. She grasped the golden handle and pulled open the Roman door. It was Clark's mother. She stood in the early afternoon light in a casual summer dress and a jeans jacket. She looked nervous, clinging to the post on the outside wall. Why is she here? Sadie thought. For a moment, they stared at each other. When Sadie gathered the courage to speak, she said, "Would you like to come in?" The room was filled with silence, as the only sound that graced the air was the ticking of the clock. "I'm sorry," Sadie said, as tears formed in her eyes. "It's not your fault," Mrs. Posen said as she focused on her hands nervously. "I found something in a box of Clark's stuff that I think you should have." She fiddled around in her tote bag and finally pulled out a leather-bound book. "I know you and my son didn't have the relationship anybody could have intended, but there were things Clark seemed to hide, even from those closest to him," she pleaded. She opened the journal and moistened her index finger to scroll through and separate the pages. Here it is," she exclaimed as she passed the book to Sadie. It was Clark's journal. A few tears fell from Sadie's eyes as she read and suddenly understood. Clark was gay. With that knowledge, a lot of things made sense to Sadie. Why he had been so cold. Why he felt he needed to marry Sadie even after they had become estranged. He must have felt he had to hide his true feelings from the public because of his family's prominent standing in the community. She probably frustrated him by trying to get him to feel when he had to bury his feelings. Society had evolved, but sadly not enough to write same-sex marriage into the testing laws. Yet, another reason Sadie needed to fight to get the law overturned after all. Clark's mother stood up from the living room table and left quietly as Sadie fell into a spiral, reading the journal for hours upon hours. She had barely noticed Mrs. Posen leave when Robert snuck up beside her with a kiss. She quickly closed the book and said, "You'll never believe who just came for a visit." "Who, sweetheart?" Robert asked. "My ex's mother," she replied. "She gave me this." Sadie passed the journal to Robert, opened to the right page. He gasped. "Oh, I'm so sorry." He walked around to the front of the couch to sit beside her. He held her in his arms for a while as she thought. Maybe this was the clarity Sadie needed to feel like she could settle down. For now, a reconciliation with her parents might be out of the question, but maybe she could finally let go of some of the guilt she had been holding onto over Clark and her not working out. Of course, it wasn't her fault that Clark was frustrated and took it out on her because of the secrets he was forced to keep. She was looking for true love, and he was looking for a way to hide among all the other married men in Utopia. They were bound to fail. She could heal and move on from her past once and for all. Clark, her hometown, even some of her family, was in the past. Robert and the life they would create was Sadie's future, and she was ready to accept that. Robert sat up and brought Sadie to his chest so she could hear his heartbeat. It played like a drum on repeat. Sadie held Robert tight. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for the next chapter. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In the description below, I've included links where you may find and purchase this book.